All right, welcome back in, everyone, to the Go 247 podcast. I'm Glenn West, the senior writer here at the site, joined by a very busy Dylan Sanders. It sounds like this week, Dylan wrapping up might be an open date for LSU football, but it hadn't been a bye week for Dylan by any stretch. What's been going on with you, Dylan?
Just a lot of school, senior year. I heard about senioritis. I was expected to get ready to graduate and not care, but I have so much to do. There's so much schoolwork. School is busy. School
Yeah,
keeps me busy, but it's been good. It's been awesome. Been able to talk to some recruits earlier this week about the reactions to Ole Miss game. So it's been a fun week. Just busy.
yep. No, we've been keeping busy. We've been trying to keep busy on the site as well, and we'll certainly get into some of the stuff we've been doing, and kind of just wanted to take this time with LSU, obviously, in their open date to kind of give a little bit of a recap or a little bit of maybe an assessment of kind of how LSU's looked here 8 games into the Brian Kelly era. We'll touch on just some of the bright spots, some of the low spots, and then some of the things we could potentially see improvement on here over the final 4 game stretch for LSU to be contenders and not pretenders, right? As Brian Kelly said. So I guess with that, we'll start off with just some overall thoughts here on the team and on the program as they head into this open date. Very impressive last 2 weeks. I think obviously there's a lot that you can build on here with the back-to-back wins. First, over Florida on the road, and then against Ole Miss at home, taking care of business against a top 10 team for the first time in the Kelly era. I thought, we've touched on it a little bit, but offensively, LSU's really taken a bunch of steps forward. Jaden Daniels pretty much looks like a new quarterback these last 2 weeks. I'd love to know what kind of uncorked his rise here in the last 2 weeks. We've kind of heard from Kelly a little bit. He just thinks he's more comfortable, and I think the big thing for me is it sounds like there's a lot of trust being built in the locker room right now. This seems like a locker room that's as together as it's been all off season and all season long. They've really grown, I think, closer together here in these last couple of weeks as they've kind of found some success. And I think that's kind of just a natural response. When you kind of see something working, you want to work on it more and hone it and continue to make it a positive effect on the team. And I think really top down, it's been a really stellar effort offensively. Defensively, I think there's certainly some areas which we'll touch on that I think need to see improvement. But it does sound like there are going to be some reinforcements on the way. From everything that we've heard this week, it sounds like Major Burns is going to get cleared for practice early next week and be cleared to return for the Bama game. A huge piece for LSU if they're able to get him back at safety next to Greg Brooks. And you can obviously switch in Joe Fouché there a little bit as well, who's had a really nice bounce back week against the Rebels last week. But I think just, the big thing with the defense has just been consistency in tackling. I mean, I think we saw it against Florida where this was just it wasn't a very good effort in the tackling department. It's been an issue that's cropped up on them a couple of times this season. I think most notably probably against Auburn and against Tennessee in Florida. But, really that second, third, and fourth quarter of the Ole Miss game, I thought they came out really ready to play. There was certainly a lot more improvement there, in terms of tackling that they were able to really show. I think Mekhi Wingo has continued to be a star on the inside defensively. Harold Perkins continues to emerge as a freshman of the year candidate, I think, in the SEC. He's had that kind of impact for LSU when he's been in the game, and just been really solid play, I think, from the secondary as a whole in the last couple of weeks. So, with that, I'll turn it over to you, Dylan. Are there any big picture kind of just bullet points that you wanted to hit on, something that you really noticed LSU doing well, maybe not doing well in the last couple of weeks that we're going to hit on here?
Well, I'll state what I think really needs to improve, and it's something that we've talked about a lot, and I think has gotten slightly better as special teams.
Yeah.
Right now, they rank bottom 30 in the country in kickoff return coverage and bottom 15 in punt return coverage in the country. And I think that's just, again, unacceptable. But I think it got slightly better. We're not seeing as many as terrible, horrific mistakes as we did to start the year. So it's getting slightly better. We got a Brian Polian fist pump this week, which was good to see.
Yeah.
I know he was happy to have like some actual good special teams play. So I think it'll be interesting to see how they address special teams over these next 2 weeks. You have time to really take a step back and be like, okay, what's going wrong? What's going on? What can we do to get our gunners in position? What can we do to improve our coverage? Because, like I said, it's been bad. And it's one of those things that I think a lot of people don't really think about whenever you're like looking at overall like team is like, oh, how well do they cover punts? But it's something that I think has plagued this team, and being in the bottom of the entire country is something that I think is not ideal for LSU.
Yeah, I mean, look, bouncing off that a little bit, just kind of the plan for the open date this week was they wanted to get Polian out on the road early, so they got in a lot of special teams work, from what I understand, on Tuesday. They did just a ton of special teams work, a ton of individual drills, and then they had a little scrimmage there with some of the younger guys on Tuesday, from what we heard from Coach Kelly. So they got Polian out on the road for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday for recruiting. But yeah, I think, look, it's the special teams kind of got to a point, I think, this year where you don't want it to keep beating yourself. And like, LSU for really 3-4 straight weeks there was just essentially spotting the opponent's points because of special teams. And I think for the first time against Ole Miss, they didn't do that. They didn't spot an opposing team points because of bad field coverage on punts, or because of a muff punt, or a missed kick, or a shanked punt, or something like that. I mean, like penalties. I mean, the penalties that were racking up on special teams were getting pretty absurd. And I think they were able to clean up a lot of that for the most part against Ole Miss. I think that's, really focus. I mean, I think to play special teams, you got to have a mindset and a focus on just doing the simple things right. And I think LSU's kind of found a little bit of encouragement, I think, after that Ole Miss performance. And look, I mean, as you approach this Bama game here, the one thing you're not going to be able to do against Alabama is spot them good field position, spot them points, give Bryce Young any kind of advantage offensively, and LSU certainly got to clean that up. So, I think that is probably a good stopping point for special teams. We don't want to hark on those guys too much. Look, we as part of our series this week on the site, we kind of released some grades throughout offense, defense, and special teams on the various positions. I guess we could hit on a couple of position groups that maybe have stood out. Maybe that would be a good idea to kind of hit on a couple of positions that maybe have underwhelmed, overwhelmed, and I guess for me, what I'll start with is the wide receiver group, because that came in. They came in as the most highly touted group on the roster. Outside of maybe defensive line, I mean, I think we all expected the D line to be pretty consistent and pretty good. But the wide receiver group was like right there with them in terms of talent, in terms of expectations. And I think through 5-6 weeks of the season, they didn't really live up to those expectations. That's just, I think, the truth of it all. There was certainly some issues as you tried to build trust with Jaden Daniels as the quarterback. There were bad route timings. There was drops. There were just lack of focus, I think, at times with that receiver group. And, I think they took a brunt of the kind of I'm trying to think of the word, just the brunt of the hits there on offense. They kind of got beat up a little bit, I think, in terms of just the way that they were being talked about. I think resonated with the players for a little bit. It sounds like things really took a turn for that group when they had the players only meeting. I believe it was after the Tennessee game where they had the players only meeting between Daniels and the wide receivers. It might have been just prior to the Tennessee game. But you could really start to sense, even in that Tennessee loss, that I think they were starting to build a little bit more of a rapport. And then you really got to see it against Florida and against Ole Miss these last two games. Really, really encouraged by the way they played. I think Daniels is feeling more confident and more trusting in those guys. Kayshawn has had some really nice moments. Brian Thomas has been he's been really just electrifying at times. And then Dre Jenkins has been Mr. Consistency for you really all season. And Dre Jenkins is a guy that even us here 24/7, we haven't talked about him a whole lot. And he's just been honestly probably their most consistent receiver now for 2 years in a row. And he's kind of the guy that gets forgotten in the lineup. So that's our bad. I think that's the media's bad as a whole. He deserves some more praise for just how well he's been playing these last 2 years. And certainly I think one of the early throws that I think really got this thing back on track was Daniels hitting Jenkins on that go route against Florida. Just a beautiful pass, beautiful catch, beautiful route, everything all around. And so I do think this is a receiver group that is on the rise. I think you'll see them over these next 4 games start to reach some of those expectations that we had for them coming into the year. And I think it's going to be a really good, really strong finish for the offense as a whole. I'm really feeling encouraged about seeing that consistency through 2 weeks in a row. Dylan, are there anything offensively, any position group in particular that you feel like deserves a little bit of a nod, or something that maybe a group that's overhyped or underhyped, underproduced? Just what are your thoughts?
Well, I think we have to talk about Jaden a little bit during this,
Sure.
and I think there was a growing sentiment outside of the program, maybe outside of locally and outside, that they were like, "All right, it's not a matter of if, but when Garrett Nussmeier takes over the offense halfway through this season or whatever." It's like, when is Garrett Nussmeier gonna become the starter? And the answer, as we're clear, is not while Jaden Daniels is here. Yeah. Because I mean, Daniels proved pretty much everyone wrong. And he was, it took some time getting used to the offense, and I think that was to be expected. But what maybe wasn't expected, that LSU gave him the Sorry. I think we get cut out. Oh, yeah, now I can hear myself.
We were talking. LSU gave him the time. Can you hear?
Yep. Okay.
All right.
I'm
LSU
good.
gave him the time was when you cut out on
us. And LSU gave him the time to really sit in and grow in the offense, and I think it's paid off because the past 2 weeks he's been one of the most electrifying players in the country. I mean, 11 touchdowns total. Just coming from your quarterback pretty much is crazy, and very good within 2 weeks. So it'll be a question of if he can continue that, but I don't think he's shown us anything or any reason to believe that he won't keep continuing, because he's gotten better every week of the season. So I don't think that there's a reason to now expect a huge regression, because that's just not how this season has played out. And so I want to give him his flowers for growing and maturing. And really, you don't see it often, a player change this much in the middle of a season, but he has. And so I think that he deserves some credit for that.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I mean, I think in our offensive grades piece, I stuck it as a B+ for Jaden. And really, I mean, if you had said that after the Tennessee game or the Auburn game or something, I mean, it would have been Homer. It's a Homer kind of pick there for B+. But he really has been that impressive these last 2 weeks, just in confidence and aggression and just everything that you wanted to see from him. He did it in back-to-back weeks, which was the biggest thing that I wanted to see after that Florida performance. I was like, is this going to be an outlier for him, or is this potentially a sign of what's to come? And I think, just kind of bouncing off that a little bit, I mean, like, if LSU gets this version of Jaden Daniels for the rest of the season, they're going to be in every single game they play. Like I don't think there's anybody out there that doesn't think they can't beat Alabama or Arkansas or A&M if Daniels keeps performing like this. I mean, he has been as close to uh, perfect as you could possibly ask for in this offense. He's making the right decisions. I mean, 11 touchdowns over a 2-week span kind of pretty much speaks for itself, but the way he's been doing it has been extremely, extremely impressive. He's hitting his receivers in stride. He's making the right reads. He's taking off when he needs to, not when he wants to. I think that's been a huge thing for him in terms of his in-season development. And I think he trusts the coaching staff more. I think honestly, like as they've been working with his mechanics, as they've been kind of tinkering with his game this off season, you got to build that trust. I mean, you got to be able to build that trust not only with your players, but with the coaching staff as well, with the game plans going into games. I think the play calling from Mike Denbrock has been really much improved these last couple of weeks because they're leaning into what Jaden does best. Um, and you know, I think we'll get into this part next, but the offensive line is holding up too. I mean, like I think we have to touch on the offensive line um, and the progress that they've made over the last couple weeks. I mean, when you have your two bookend tackles, Will Campbell and Emory Jones, pretty much solidified for the next 2 years, um, that is a huge plus. I mean, they are going to get, or they already have gotten some really amazing experience in year one as true freshmen. Can you just, I mean, imagine what they could be in 2 years from now? I mean, it's pretty crazy to think about where, especially considering where this group was this time a year ago, where I mean, it was very bleak in terms of the future of the O line. You just had no idea what that group was going to be able to do. I think Charles Turner has settled in at center. You know, the last 2 weeks they've been rolling with Miles Frazier and Anthony Bradford as the two guards, and that's worked out well. I think it's gotten to a point where you know they're expecting Garrett Dellinger to be healthy for this Bama game. They think he could be ready to play, but I'm kind of the opinion that man, I really I really wouldn't want to touch this offensive line the way they've been rolling the last couple of weeks. What are your thoughts on the O line?
Yeah, I think better than expected going in. It was it was probably the biggest question mark for a lot of people on the team, and I think it's been answered. Charles Turner has been good. Like I think I agree. Everyone should just stay where they're at. It's looking good. It's gotten to a point where you don't really have to think about it that much. The protection for Jaden's been really good. The running game's been opening up. They're hitting that rhythm, so I think you keep it where it's at right now.
I agree. I agree completely. You know, just I guess wrapping up with the offense here, Josh Williams been really impressed with him. He's really developed as a runner. You know, obviously they used him early in the season as a third down back. You know, in pass protection as a blocker. But they've really opened him up, and I think used him as a rusher in a really good way. Amani Goodwin came back from that injury and looked pretty explosive, I thought, in his first game back from against Ole Miss. I think he'll see his touches continue to rise in this offense. And yeah, I just think this offense is really going to be in for something special here over the next several weeks. I think they have a chance to really go on a great run. And that kind of, I guess, leads us to the defensive side of things here. You know, I would say probably my biggest takeaway defensively has I mean, it's kind of hard not to look at Harold Perkins and think that's probably the most different guy on the field. I mean, all you got to do is listen to Lane Kiffin on that one. But um, how they've been bringing their pressures the last couple weeks, I think, has been very interesting with how they've used Perkins, with how they've opened up the defense a little bit. You know, they've done a really nice job, I think, of balancing wanting to use Perkins, but also keeping guys like Ojolari and Golly Gay engaged and on the field and in opportunities where they can make plays as well. But really, this comes down to, in my opinion, the tackling. And I think like the tackling has just been so much better. These particularly against Ole Miss, where you know you kind of he kind of saw some stumbles early in the early in the game where they got down 17-3. But really those second, third, fourth quarters, they kept everything in front of them. They got pressure on Jackson Dart and they made him throw they made him throw into really tight windows and in coverage windows. And then they didn't let anything kind of break away on him too, which was really, really important. I think for the confidence of this defense that had really built some really great, kind of early season momentum that just kind of got lost there in the shuffle with the Auburn game, with the Tennessee game, and then a little bit with the Florida game as well. I just thought that 3-week stretch there, they could have let that get to them a little bit, but really after every single one of those games, the players we talked to were still extremely upbeat about kind of the predicament they were in. They understood that there needed to be some improvements there, but they felt like they had the talent to be able to go out and make those improvements. And I think the confidence that they gained in that Ole Miss game will certainly kind of help propel them into some more consistent effort. I think over the last 4 games, but you've touched a lot on Harold Perkins. You talked about him a lot. Is there anything in this defense you're looking at as like, okay, this is how we can have some success here over the last 4 weeks of the year?
I think it's been pretty much, the defensive front has been as good as you could possibly ask for, especially depending on seeing how Mason Smith got hurt, which was a huge bummer. And everybody was like, "Oh no!" Well, now the line might suck, but we've given Mekhi Wingo a lot of praise, rightfully so. Jay Roy, Ali Gay has stepped it up. He was having a rough start to the season, but I think he's gone back to the mean. He's looking like he should look.
He's been great on run defense.
Great on run defense. And his lacking in pass rush has been supplemented by Harold Perkins, and Savion Jones, I think, is a producer that not a lot of people expected to see. Mm-hmm. And even the linebackers have gotten better. And they're understanding when and where to use these guys, which is good. And I think that's what Matt House has done a really good job of. There's been a lot of complaining about Harold Perkins' usage, but outside of that, I think that he's done a good job of putting guys into places to succeed. The big question mark, I think, now is the secondary, and that was a question mark going into the season for a lot of people. And I think it's been continued. LSU still does give up those big runs, big plays through the air, Ole Miss probably would have gotten a couple more big plays if it wasn't for the front just bothering Jackson Dart all day, making him miss open guys. So I think that's where you need to look at. But also with Major Burns coming back, I think that really allows you to go back to what your strength was. Yeah. So that's going to be a huge, huge, huge return. But overall, if we're going report cards, I'll give Matt House a B+ for his first year as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's kind of the one thing that Brian Kelly, I think, knew when bringing in House is that he would be able to adjust to SEC offenses pretty quickly because he has that experience going back to Kentucky several years ago. And look, I think you don't want to hark on any one guy too much, but like getting Baskerville in there and Greg Penn is kind of your anchors on linebacker, I think has been really, really a smart move for LSU. Mike Jones, I think, still could find his way back on the field, but you've seen his role really diminish a lot over the last couple of weeks in terms of that inside linebacker spot. It's just been a tough adjustment for Mike, and he's been I think that's a really good testament to the coaching staff because he has been such a huge leader for them off and on the field. I mean, like he just talking with him, you can really see how much he's respected in that locker room. Kind of reminds me a little bit about, kind of how Damone Clark was respected in 2020 and everybody was really hyping on him as a guy that was going to be a huge piece for LSU's defense. And it just didn't work out that first year for him as a starter. But, the coaching staff made a really good choice here, I think, with getting Baskerville some more reps, with, kind of continuing to coach up Greg Penn. There's been some some flaws, I think, from Penn that you're going to certainly have to clean up in the offseason. But whether it's eye discipline, whether it's just kind of managing the field in the middle of the field a little bit better. But I think defensively, it's going to start and stop with how the secondary plays. You touched on it a little bit there, but I do think the return of Major Burns, or the expected return of Major Burns, will add an extra layer of confidence and momentum into this group. Look, Joe Fouché had a really nice bounce back game, I think, against Ole Miss, and you're starting to see the development here of some real depth, I think, in the secondary, which was something you couldn't really say 2 weeks ago when you had to essentially put Bernard Converse as your other safety because you didn't trust what you had back there. So I do think that, look, the secondary's play is going to be huge against Alabama, against a quarterback like Bryce Young. I wouldn't expect LSU's defensive line to get that consistent pressure on Bryce Young. Alabama's offensive line is again really, really good. I mean, like, they always seem to churn out really good offensive lines, and I don't think that's gonna be the case again this week as well. So, but we'll dive in more to Alabama on Sunday when we get back together for another pod. But I think defensively, when you look at just kind of the big picture takeaway, I think it kind of revolves around tackling and around getting stops in the secondary and being consistent in their communication. So, I guess with that, we can kind of dive into what you want to see maybe moving forward. I think that would be a good thing to say. Just what are maybe one or two things that you're looking at? It could be offensively or defensively, that if LSU checks these boxes, will really kind of propel them into a strong finish to the 2022 season.
Let's see. I'd say, honestly, I think at this point of the season, with who they have running back coming up on the schedule, as if the offense can match the production that they've had the past 2 weeks, or at least get around that, I think LSU has a chance to run the table for the rest of the season, if not only drop one more game. It really comes down to LSU keeping this momentum through the bye week and coming back with the same confidence, if not more confidence. The defense will figure itself out. There's enough talent on the defense where, they'll get enough. They should get enough stops. The offense just has to keep working this way if they want to win out for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think it's going to start with the offense and its ability to continue to build on these last two games. I think kind of an underrated part of all this is the coaching as well. I think you've seen these players really buy into the coaches in the last 3-4 weeks or so. I mean, look, I just think that it's going to be a really good run here over the next 3 or 4 weeks. I think LSU has a lot of momentum to continue to grow on. It'll be interesting to see kind of how the injuries shake out. There's also a chance that Jack Besh will be back next week for the Bama game. He's dealing with a little bit of back strain, but really, you're going to want all hands on deck, and I think that's going to be. This is going to be the opportunity, or it's going to be the point in the season where we really see LSU's conditioning take foot and kind of be front and kind of front step there in terms of just how they've conditioned their nutrition, their bodies, how they hold up. It's something that Kelly has harped on really all season long, and LSU's been a second half team all year, and I think that's just because their athletes they're not only playing better and executing better, but it's because they have more juice in the second half than the other team. And I think you can see that in a lot of these games where LSU's offensive line is really controlling the opposing defensive line these last couple of weeks in the second half. And they're going to need to do that again here against Alabama next week. So conditioning, nutrition is going to be continue to be stressed and a very, very important part of all of this. But I guess with that, we had.
I did want to ask you
Yep.
another thing to look at middle of the season. We haven't really talked about. We've talked about him throughout, but not really any impressions. But um, we're halfway through the first season of the Brian Kelly era. What do you think about the fit? Everyone was saying it's terrible fit. People were calling him a terrible coach, but now suddenly people seem to have remembered that he's one of the best coaches in college football. But how do you think? What's your impression of Brian Kelly so far? This halfway into his first season.
Yeah, so I think probably it's he's promised. I think their year one kind of plans have kind of gone to fruition so far. I don't think this is a program that feels it's close to where it needs to be. We've heard that from Coach Kelly really all season long, how much they still want to improve, how much recruiting is going to be important over the next couple of years. But I think what you're starting to see is that buy-in, the buy-in from the players that are on this current roster that are starting to understand what it takes to win games on Saturdays. That process has been exponentially better, I think, over the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, even. Yeah, I would say a strong start. I mean, if you had sat here and told me that LSU was going to be in a tie for first in the SEC West heading into this final 4-game stretch, I wouldn't have believed you. I would have thought they would have been kind of more in the 3-loss column at this point in the year. I thought they might have dropped another game than they have. But, we were talking about earlier this year that Mississippi State game was really a trap game for LSU, and they came out and really, really played well in that one. But I think it's just been a strong start. I mean, you can – I mean, this guy inherited 39 scholarship players a year ago, and turned it into a team that's competing on a week in, week out basis in the SEC. And I think that is a strong indicator of kind of what's to come. I think one of the more important things is that you've started to see some development from some of the young players, the Perkins, the Campbells, the Joneses of the world, guys that are going to be in your program here and be pillars of your program for the next couple of years. You're getting them that experience early in their career, and they're capitalizing on their opportunities. I think that's a really strong indication of Kelly's influence and kind of the process that it takes for them to get onto the field and play well. I would say it's been if I had to peg a grade on it, probably an A-. I mean, like there's been some coaching flukes here and there. The 4th and 10, against Tennessee, I'll never understand that. I mean, that's just not. And I think that I'm not in the on a lone boat in that regard. But what are kind of your thoughts on how Coach Kelly's handled this first year?
Yeah, I mean, we could be seeing one of the marquee rebuilds ever, honestly, at this point, just in terms of speed and success this early. I said LSU going into the year needed to go 7-5 to finish the year with a positive outlook. But now at this point of the season, 7-5 would be a massive disappointment.
Yeah.
Only winning the UAB game to finish out the year would be a massive disappointment. Honestly, I mean, he's had to have exceeded my expectations. I think Josh Heupel still has the crown for quickest rebuild, just to how fast they've gotten to this point. If LSU's where Tennessee's at next year, I think it'll be really exciting, but you can't expect that.
No.
But I think his ability to bring in through the transfer portal and bring in the right guys from the transfer portal, and I think recruiting has gone swimmingly so far, especially for the next couple of years, and some guys that they're in place to get that haven't committed yet. Really exciting. So I think recruiting has been the least talked about, but also the most impressive part of Brian Kelly's tenure. This staff can recruit well, very, very well.
Yeah,
Just some of the people that they're in competition to get should not be realistically.
yeah, in a year one rebuild, absolutely not. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but they have people built in, and recruits are super excited to join this program, and it's encouraging to see. I think the future is very bright, and I think Brian Kelly fits LSU. That's my definitive statement.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think you bring a winning coach is what you're getting in Brian Kelly, and everybody knows a winner fits well in Baton Rouge. So, yeah, I'm glad you touched on that recruiting point too, because they are absolutely tearing it up. LSU's now up to 23 commits in this class, and I think, with no scholarship limit, they're going to be in for a strong close to the 2023 class as well. So,
and they're already off to a great start for the 2024 class as well.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. They're visiting all these guys. They're spending a lot of time this week out on the trails, making sure they're keeping in touch with all their commits in this class, touching on a couple of guys in the next class as well. So they're doing their due diligence, and I think that's what you really need to see. And that's kind of what Coach Kelly told us earlier this week, is that this is going to be it's great that we're building these habits now, but we're really still building for the future. And the next 1, 2, 3 recruiting classes are really going to show us a lot about what our program's future is going to be in terms of stability, in terms of winning year in and year out. So strong start, I think, on that front. And they've been doing it locally, and they've been doing it nationally too, which is really, really impressive. So I guess with that, we'll be back on Sunday to kind of give a little bit more of an in-depth look at Alabama and the matchup that
they're good. I'll give you a quick.
They're good.
Quick
spoiler. That's a spoiler alert. They're good. But this is going to be a fun one. I think the anticipation is going to be right there for 3 or 4 years ago when this game was 1-3. It's or 2-3 when Alabama came to town at night. Now you're getting a similar matchup with a lot on the line. I mean, these are two teams that are.
This could be the SEC West.
This could be the SEC West, exactly. Yeah, and when you're playing Saban, and essentially Saban's playing for a season right now, you're going to get their best week in and week out, and I think it's just going to make for a really entertaining matchup. So, with that, we'll be back on Sunday. But until then, you guys stay safe, and we'll see you soon.